So I just had to stay ahead of my students. Wow. The mandolin is tuned exactly like the violin, but you just learn the picking of it. The slide trombone was the same way as fingering on the clarinet, except every time you moved that down a little bit, it went up a note, a little bit farther, a full note. And some kids learning to play the trombone had the string tied around their wrist around the slide so they could throw it down at the end.
To get the last note.
And pull it back?
To get that last note. It didn't come very often.
So you taught about 14 different instruments.
Mm-hmm. At one time or another.
Yeah.
When did you start learning the weather?
Well, I wanted to, before you get to the weather, I want to talk about, you used to tune pianos too, did you?
Oh, yeah.
So that was one of the jobs you would do. You go out and tune pianos. And then you told me about this one on the roof. I was surprised that was the same piano we had at home. The one that was on the roof of the church. So what happened to that?
I don't know what happened to it. I think we were talking this the other day.
Yeah.
But Tim, while I was teaching music in Midvale, there was a piano up on the roof of the church they used as a dance hall and a kind of amusement. And they had a piano up there. And they covered it up. And the cover got blown off during winter, saturated with snow and water, and they gave me this piano. And the keys were warped, so I had to whittle them and so they freed and tuned it up. And it had a wonderful tone. I took it to Blanding, but I don't know what happened.
But you remember it, Dad?
Yeah. No, I just remember the story.
Oh.
I don't remember the piano. I remember the story, and it seemed like I remember you working on it. But I was only about 6 years old. Could have been more than 6 or 7 at the most. Well, probably 5. I was probably 5 years old.
How old were you when we went to Blanding?
I was 6. I took the first grade. I just only made it in the first grade in Midvale, and when I got to Blanding, I took the first grade over again. I moved, and I didn't get a chance to change that.
So just like your dad, you had to take a grade over. He moved.
Yeah. So.
I'm not hearing you too well.
So in Blanding, or in Midvale, is where Grandpa had a shop.
Yeah.
And then, and we lived, let's see, I remember going to school there for the first year.
We lived in 2 different places in Midvale.
Yeah, I remember both. One was, I could walk to the store from our house, and I could walk to Grandpa's barber shop.
Well, you could do that for place.
Well,
They were about the same distance.
Oh, were they?
From
Well, it
that shop.
seemed like one of them was closer to the main street.
It was in the business part, and there, it was near. That home we lived in, were the business part, and the first home we lived in. Mm-hmm.
So.
Right
And that's where I remember the most about your amateur radio. I remember you building them, and I remember the room where you had equipment, and you used to send messages there, and you used to listen to those. And I remember that was the one where you had all the cards were posted up on the wall.
I told you I have a lot of those cards left, didn't I?
Yeah.
What cards for?
They're what we called QL cards. They were to confirm a contact.
Oh, so
the next time you come down, I'll show them to you. And
because that way you could map out how far signal you've heard and.
yeah, yes. At Blanding, I got our. See what I'm telling you?
What are you telling me?
I'm trying to tell you, the Chicago area was where I had the best contacts because of weather conditions in my area, antenna pointed and everything, and some parts of California. So there were areas that I couldn't reach because of conditions.
Yeah.
But the Chicago area was one of my favorites for contacts.
What was the furthest communications you made on your shortwave? You know how far away you were able to reach?
Now that's a good question. That's a good question.
Well, do you ever remember?
It deserves a good answer, but it's a hobby.
Yeah.
It's a hobby.
But did you get United States?
I'm trying to think, but I don't remember. Later, I could have done with the lower frequency, or a higher frequency and lower wavelength. But most of my contacts were on 8 meters, and that was good for, depending on atmospheric conditions, that was the best and the farthest I ever got. But when you graduated, you went down to 40 meters, and 20, you could reach any place in the world under certain conditions, but you may be talking to some conditions change, and they cut you off in the middle of your transmission. Do you know why this?
You told me, I never knew this, but you told me that depending on what frequency you're using is what angle the wave is at.
I remember telling you.
Yes, and if it's a low enough angle, you get a long distance when it bounces off the atmospheric.
Until you get a straight.
And what goes at a straight line?
Anything in a straight line you could get. Other than that, no. It's like your TV waves, your TV channels now.
Okay, they're at a straight line?
Have your high frequencies and your very high frequencies. Your ultra high
right.
and your very high. And with very high, there's some variation that, you know, it will take some curving and bouncing off from clouds and things like that. But your ultra high straight line.
There was the one instance I remember where you were talking to somebody, and of course it was all code, and you called them Mr. So-and-so. I don't know, you had a phrase for man or a woman, it seems like. If it was a man, you used a certain code, woman, something else. Anyway, they sent a card, and then that person came to see you, and you were calling Mr. all the time. It was a woman that was communicating with you. Remember that? They came to visit you, and it was some woman that was communicating, and you kept calling, on the code you were calling them a man.
I had quite a few visitors.
Yeah.
So was your shortwave code and not voice?
Oh yeah.
At first, I finally graduated voice, but I went back to code because it was more reliable. I could understand it better. It was simpler equipment.
And so how quick can you understand code?
I got a certificate for 25 words a minute, which is pretty good.
Wow, yes. That's faster than I can type.
I started to record code with the typewriter, but I didn't get very far. But eventually, your code, like the, or some of these short words, they took on a meaning just like you were speaking them. You didn't have to listen to dots and dashes. The combination told you what that word was. You had to get that good.
Interesting.
In fact,
It's like learning a new language, huh? But
as a matter of fact, I hear that's why you got the job in Blanding as a meteorologist, because you're the only one that had a license in that area for code. And then is that how they contacted you? They found out you were a licensed operator?
That's the reason I got the Weather Bureau in Blanding.
To me, it sounds like you would get the job and then you would learn how to do it.
I had learned
The weather.
I had learned clouds, what the name of the cloud were, what level they were, and at one time what direction they were traveling.
And how high were they?
Of course, barometer, you had to learn to read that, and then it was all coded.
I sure remember visiting as a little boy to Blanding and you getting up at night and going out there and reading that. All of those instruments in the weather box, right? What was that called?
The shelter.
The little shelter.
Instrument shelter.
And you'd take temperature and barometer and wind speed?
Made rain if there's any.
Oh, okay. And then you would just make a phone call then, right?
Yes, that was all put down on a printed form. I don't remember what came first, the clouds or the wind, or I think it was the barometer pressure that came first, and then relative humidity, and then your clouds had to be in 3 or 4 different classifications, what they were, if there were any. And then when you sent your coded message, then they knew what seats those come in, what they were referring to.
I see. So it was Morse code, and then it went to radio voice, and then it went to phone call? Interesting. And how many years did you do that?
That might be revealing a little bit about my age. 39 years.
Wow.
I had a service pin for 40 years.
And that was every 3 hours.
Night and day.
Night and day. Round the clock for 39 years. Whew. When we first moved, I remember in Blanding, when I was real young, we had coal oil lamps. I don't remember us having electricity for a long time. Seemed like we had just lamps, these coal oil lamps.
Well, that was the time when I was going to school. When we moved to Blanding, we had lights then.
Yeah, but we also had lanterns. You'd light the lanterns sometimes. Well, it seemed like electricity off at 10 o'clock at night.
Not at that time, no. We had,
but they used it, didn't they?
Yeah. We used to have it from sundown to 10 o'clock at night, and as the days got longer, why shortened the period. Then finally someone said, I'd like a refrigerator, and they got a petition out or something, and then they started running them all night. But before that, people got washing machines, and they wanted to wash, so they would run their lights on Mondays from about 9 o'clock until noon, and that's when the women did their laundry. And then it finally graduated.
Now, was it a short period of electricity because there was just no need for it at night?
No need for it. The dances were held on Friday night, and on those nights they would run from dark until midnight. And a half hour before they turned the light off, they would blink and they'd turn them off and on, and blink them. They said, you'd better be getting home or you're going to be in the dark.
And then they had, well, tell us about I remember, like it was yesterday, the windmill thing you put up. And so, tell us about that. You had a big propeller, you put it on, I don't know if a generator or alternator, you had batteries up the attic and car lights in the house, right?
Didn't you ever hear that?
No.
We cut our own propellers or impellers.
Yeah.
We magazines or instructions to the angle. You know, as they get closer to the tip, the less pitch there is.
Yes.
And that had to be on the jewel. And I'd laminate boards, half each boards, laminate them, so there was a blotted carbon out of that. Then I'd take a car generator.
So it's not an alternator, but a generator.
It's a generator, not an alternator.
Okay.
And rewire that. Take the armature out, take all the old wiring out, and change the size of the wire and the number of turns. And then, so it would generate at a slower speed.
Ah.
And then that was, the propeller was fastened to that shaft and stuck up there on the, when we had wind, we had electricity. When we didn't have wind, we didn't.
And that went to a bank of batteries, and then that went to lights that you could turn off. And that really fascinates me. I just love the idea of using, natural resources for energy.
How long did we have that?
Oh, we didn't have it very long.
Did Grandma like it?
She never did say.
Boy, you think she'd be really impressed.
She was.
Well, she probably got used to all that stuff. They just figured he was a genius and could do anything. It's amazing. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
That would be much fun. That just because the wind's blowing,
Yeah, you got like.
I'm charging batteries and I could run lights.
We didn't know what photocells were then, though.
Did they have them?
I don't think so. They were invented.
Yeah, at the time of Einstein, they knew of the what they called the photoelectric effect.
I don't know.
But
I never did use one.
I think a good stiff wind generates still a lot more electricity than a photocell.
Our places aren't there where they battery of these windmills.
Yes.
Where
Outside of Bakersfield, California, I've driven by there. Up on the mountains, just tons of them. That's right. Yeah.
well, I remember you making soap too, but I don't know if you did that because it was hard to buy soap, or you just made it because that was
I think a lot of it because soap was so expensive. 5 cents a bar.
Yeah. But you used to take it, I remember you'd take the, when you butcher the hogs, you'd render the grease out, mix lye with it, and then they'd
Boil it.
and they'd lay it out in slabs and cut it. And
That's what Mom did for her laundry.
used to build a fire outside because I used to have to do it. Heat up the water outside on Mondays, I guess.
Mondays was wash day, Tuesdays was ironing day, Wednesday, I think they cleaned house, and every day, Friday or Saturday was the day they baked. Was regular.
Was there a day you always had beans?
So I think Monday we usually had beans when Mama washed.
Yeah.
Because she could cook it real easy.
She cooked it while she had a fire in the stove.
And then, it just left me. Well, Saturday was, I know we took a bath. We had a big wash tub.
Saturday night everyone took a bath. Yeah.
We had a big wash tub.
And a wash tub, number 2.5 wash tub.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is once a week?
Once a week, everybody bathed in the same water.
So he had to keep. So he kept the water clean. And and we didn't have. Oh, the thing I was going to think about when you had ironing day, I remember Mom had some flat irons she put on the wood stove, heat those irons up, and then she had about 3 or 4 of them. She'd put a handle on them, iron, they'd get cold, she'd pick up another one.
That was Tuesday.
Was that Tuesday when they did that? Yeah. So,
It's about time to quit, isn't it?
light.
It's getting bad.
It's getting really. Just going to
So
pause it here for a minute, and maybe we'll get.
I can feel it.
Can you feel the light? Okay. Norman Neville's and how long you run and any interesting things that happen on the river and some things like that.
Well, see, that's all in.
I know it is. A lot of this stuff's on your story, but to see you tell them the story is just, that's... So what do you feel comfortable about talking about? Nothing?
Nothing.
Um,
That thing running now.
yeah, but I can erase it.
Um,
Well, what year did you start running the river?
All right, I'll tell you the story. Make it as brief as I can. In 1948, about April, no, it was a little before April. Anyway, I had been reading an article in the Saturday Evening Post about Norman Evans and his river running, and he was in the news very much so at that time. And I had just read this article about him when he showed up at the shop where Uncle Lawrence and I were working. I was welding and Uncle Lawrence was doing mechanical work. And he came in to get some work done on one of his vehicles. And Uncle Lawrence had served some of his vehicles before, so he was well acquainted with him. So he introduced me to Norman, and I asked a few questions about river running and told him I'd read that article, and he said, well, maybe you'd like to take a short run from Bluff to Mexican Hat with some friends. And this was in April, right, because I'm remembering things which I haven't had a chance to do before. But he said, next Sunday, we were going to take a kind of a warm-up cruise. I have some friends in Monticello who are coming down, and one of the boatmen is going along with some more of my friends, and he had a man working for him by the name of, see, I haven't had a chance to remember. But anyway, he was going along, and there are going to be 3 boats. All right, this is a pleasure trip for me. So I went to Bluff, and we got in the boats, and he put this this workman, maybe I'll think of his name, but it's another man that had been working for him. He put him and I in a boat alone. Neither one of us had had oars in our hands before.
oh,
Maybe this other fellow had, but I hadn't. His name was Mike Campbelling, I believe. That's come to me. And I says, this is supposed to be a pleasure trip. I didn't know the one. I thought, well, we're just tagging along more or less, because the others were all friends and they were kind of in a group, and I was ranger. And we got down as far as, well, anyway, it was lunchtime. And when we got in the boat, he just says, follow us, do as I do, and you'll be all right. Well, so I sit in the boat there, and Mike says, aren't you going to row? I No, I'm not. Roll, you're the one. He said, well, I don't know much about this. And he finally talked me into taking the turn. So we take turns. And we managed to get down there without drowning, wrecking the boat. And I went after Norma about it. Why did you do this? But I was interested enough voting to ask a few questions. Why did you do this? Did you do that? And so we got along a little better during the rest of the trip down to Mexico. The next week, he came down, up for some more time. He says, I'd like you to take the next trip with me from Mexico to Lee's Ferry. Why? Well, you and Mike, I'm going to give you one passenger, and you'll take turns boating. Well, I says, I can't do this. I can't do this, Norman, because we're busy taking weather every 3 hours, night and day. And this is going to leave all the responsibility on my wife. And I wouldn't think about it. Well, she just walked in at that time and got in on the conversation. And Norman told her what he wanted me to do. And she says, oh, I think that we can. This is all right if you want to go. So the next week, on May the 7th,